aiding surrender. Heimdall, the far-seeing guardian who watched over the Rainbow Bridge, had remained silent throughout the heated discussions. When he finally spoke, his words stopped every conversation in the hall. His suggestion was so outrageous, so completely unthinkable, that even Loki's jaw dropped open in shock. The gods stared at Heimdall as if he had lost his mind, but they were out of other options. What he proposed, however, would challenge everything Thor stood for as a warrior. Heimdall's words hung in the air like a challenge to the very foundations of Norse honor. The far-seeing god had suggested that Thor disguise himself as a bride and infiltrate Thrym's wedding feast to recover Mjolnir. He spoke with calm authority, tie housewife's keys about his waist, and pin bridal jewels upon his breast. The idea was so fundamentally opposed to Norse concepts of masculine honor that Thor's initial response shook the very walls of Asgard. He declared the plan preposterous and swore he would never hear the end of it if word spread that the Thunder God had dressed as a woman. The assembled gods watched in tense silence as their mightiest protector wrestled with a challenge that could not be solved through brute force or lightning strikes. They had already considered launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. No other choice remained. Thor paced the hall like a caged wolf, his massive fists clenched as he grappled with the impossible choice between his warrior's pride and his duty to protect Asgard. Every instinct in his body rebelled against the idea of abandoning his identity as a fearsome warrior to play the role of a delicate bride. Loki stepped forward with barely contained excitement, volunteering to accompany Thor as his maidservant. The trickster god's eagerness to participate in this elaborate deception revealed his true nature. While Thor struggled with the concept, Loki was already plotting the specifics of costumes, mannerisms, and the lies they would need to maintain throughout their dangerous mission. The transformation began with layers of bridal linen draped over Thor's massive frame. Servants brought forth delicate jewelry, housewife's keys that symbolized domestic authority, and a dainty hood for his head. Finally came the precious necklace of Brisingar. Each item added to the disguise felt like another blow to Thor's warrior identity. When he finally looked at his reflection, the god of thunder saw an unconvincing bride staring back at him. Thor finally accepted the plan because no alternative existed. The unlikely pair prepared to set off for enemy territory, where their deception would face its ultimate test among giants, eager to celebrate their lord's triumph. The great hall of Thrym's fortress buzzed with excitement as giants gathered to witness their lord's marriage to the most beautiful goddess in all the 9 realms. Thor sat at the high table in his bridal disguise, surrounded by massive frost giants who raised their drinking horns in celebration. The feast spread before them displayed the giants' wealth and power. Roasted oxen filled enormous platters, fresh salmon gleamed on silver dishes, and barrels of mead stood ready to fuel the night's festivities. Thor's legendary appetite struck like a thunderbolt. He polished off an ox and ate whole salmon in moments, tearing through the meat as if he hadn't eaten in weeks. 3 measures of mead vanished as quickly as if someone had poured them into a bottomless pit. The assembled giants watched in stunned silence as the delicate bride consumed more food than most warriors could handle. Thrym's eyes narrowed with growing suspicion. This goddess ate like a battle-hardened warrior, returning from a long campaign, not like the refined Freya he expected to marry. Loki stepped forward with the smooth confidence of a master storyteller. He spun a tale about Freya's 8-day fast in eager anticipation of reaching Jotunheim and marrying the mighty Thrym. The explanation painted a picture of a lovesick goddess, so excited about her wedding that she had refused all food during her journey. The giants nodded in understanding, their suspicions melting away as they accepted this romantic explanation. Thrym felt honored by such devotion and relaxed completely, his doubts vanishing. Beneath his bridal veil, Thor's rage simmered like molten metal ready to explode. Every moment at the feast brought new challenges as he struggled to maintain feminine mannerisms while surrounded by his enemies. His massive hands shook with barely controlled fury as he watched the giants celebrate what they believed was their victory over Asgard. The critical moment finally arrived. Thrym commanded his servants to bring Mjolnir forth, the very moment Thor had trained his eyes on since dawn. The servants placed the legendary weapon before the disguised bride as part of the traditional ceremony. Thor's fingers closed around Mjolnir's familiar handle, and lightning immediately crackled through the hall. He ripped away his bridal veil and roared his true identity to the shocked giants. Thrym's eyes widened in terror as he realized the bride he had been celebrating was actually the god of thunder himself. Thor swung Mjolnir, killing Thrym instantly after crushing his skull with Mjolnir, then turned on the assembled giants, and even the pleading giantess met Mjolnir's crack before the hall fell silent. The theft that had begun with arrogance ended in complete destruction. This tale reveals how even the mightiest heroes must sometimes sacrifice their pride to protect what matters most. Back in Asgard, the Aesir never spoke of the bearded bride again, though a few still hide a smirk when Thor raises Mjolnir. And we end this story with a very valuable lesson. Never steal Thor's hammer. And if you're going to, don't make him dress like a woman. Tonight you'll meet the nymph whose beauty made Hades plant a forest in her image, a lover who weaponized an apple to hack a goddess's marriage laws, a king who may have raised the dragon that ate his island, a prophet who lived 7 years as each sex and paid with his eyes, and a royal couple whose wrecked ship still calms the winter seas. 5 deep-cut myths, none repeated from previous episodes. Stick around. The last scene explains why every item you just saw is really the same warning. Luce, daughter of Oceanus, shimmered like morning on still water. Hades saw her bathing on the Styx's shore and felt the ache of something that might have been love, if gods knew limits. He swept her into his shadowy chariot. In the underworld, things don't rot the way they should, they transform. When Luce's mortal bloom began to fade, Hades panicked. Unable to bear her disappearing, he offered the only gift he understood, immortality as landscape. He touched her hair. It stiffened into bark the color of moon-bleached bone. Leaves burst silver as coin flip flashes. Luce the woman became Luce the white poplar, blazing at the center of Elysium. Dead heroes rest beneath her, weaving garlands from her two-toned leaves. Dark one side, pale the other, to remind them that joy and grief always grow on the same branch. The Cercopes, twin dwarf tricksters Passalus and Acarus, live by trolling. They steal Heracles' bow and club, giggling about how the hero's butt is black as a kettle from soot. Heracles wakes, grabs both by the ankles, slings them over a pole like squirming fish, and marches toward the city to sell them. Dangling upside down, blood rushing to their heads, the twins can't stop roasting him. Even Heracles, no stranger to rage, breaks into reluctant laughter. But Zeus, hearing their unfiltered comedy, decides the world needs more mischief. He transforms them into the first monkeys, bodies still small, faces still grinning, forever swinging by what once bound them, their own tails. Sailors claim the Cercopes occasionally regain speech during eclipses, whispering new insults at any heroic statue within earshot. King Lycurgus hated surprises. When the brand-new god Dionysus marched through Thrace with drums, wine, and ecstatic maenads, Lycurgus saw a security threat. He banned viticulture, arrested Bacchic followers, even ordered his soldiers to whip the vines until they confessed their treason. Dionysus escaped into sea foam, but vengeance fermented quietly. First, the king's barley crops twisted into miniature grape clusters. Then, every cup in the palace turned to wine, no matter what was poured. Finally, Lycurgus woke screaming. Vines were sprouting from his own feet, snaking up his calves, pinning him to the palace floor. He hacked at them only to realize he was slicing his own flesh. The vines were his veins. Driven mad, he swung an axe at what he thought were tendrils on an oak and beheaded his heir. The gods let him blister in that guilt until locals, terrified, bound him and hurled him into Mount Pangaion's man-eating cave. The vines retracted, but his screams never did. Acontius, a handsome nobody from Chios, spots rich girl Sidipe under the temple colonnade. He can't speak to her, class gap miles wide, but he can exploit Olympus's fine print. He scratches on an apple. I swear by Artemis to marry Acontius. He rolls it to her sandal. She idly picks it up and reads the words aloud, which, in Artemis's precinct, equals a binding oath. Sidipe leaves, confused, but every time her father arranges a proper fiancé, she collapses with fever, so savage priests fear plague. The oracle digs through the divine TOS and finds the hitch. She's already sworn. When Sidipe finally weds Acontius, the fevers vanish. Artemis shows up, not angry but amused, honoring the couple with everlasting fidelity in exchange for the clever tribute. Moral: speak casually under a goddess's roof, and the contract is in ink you can't see. Long before the Trojan War, the island had no king, only scattered fishermen and goats. Then a stranger arrived, Cycreus, towering, scarred, carrying a bronze spear notched with unknown runes. He spoke little, ate alone, but worked miracles. He dug cisterns where springs burst overnight, charmed a wild stallion into kneeling, and once, locals swear, stood barefoot in a ring of fire to prove courage to the storm god. By year's end, the islanders begged him to rule. They didn't know he walked with a secret. He dreamt every night of fire-scaled dragons devouring his childhood village, and woke with soot under his nails, though no hearth burned nearby. Months after his coronation, goats began disappearing. Nets came up shredded as if bitten by iron teeth. One dusk, a shepherd stumbled into the agora, eyes wide, clutching a bronze scale the size of a dinner plate, edges smoking. He'd found it at the mouth of a cave where the mountain met the sea. Cycreus said nothing, only studied the scale under torchlight. It matched the color of the runes on his spear. That night, villagers saw their king ride alone toward the cave. From cliffs, they watched the torchlight vanish into the maw. Minutes stretched into hours. Then, roaring deep enough to quake wine jars on kitchen shelves, flame burst from the cave mouth. Shadows of two giants, one man, one serpent, wrestled on the cave wall like monstrous puppet theater. At dawn, silence. Cycreus emerged, armor warped, spearhead glowing red. Behind him dragged the colossal corpse of a sea dragon, neck twisted, fangs snapped, eyes like boiled copper. The island erupted in praise. They crowned him with laurel and called him Draken Soter, dragon savior. Yet some noticed his smile was hollow, as if slaying the beast had lanced a boil he secretly cherished. After the triumph feast, Cycreus changed. He paced battlements at midnight, muttering in a guttural tongue. His bathwater steamed black. Servants insisted the steam coiled like a serpent before dissolving. One harvest festival, a child accidentally spilled wine on his boots. Cycreus roared, eyes flashing ember orange, and the boy swore he saw scales ripple under the king's skin. Rumors spread. Had the battle fused man and monster? Or darker, had Cycreus never slain the dragon at all? Had he absorbed it? When storms flattened olive groves and fishermen found their nets burnt as though by underwater fire, the islanders panicked. They begged Eurystheus of Athens to intervene. The hero sailed with 50 hoplites, each carrying asbestos-soaked nets and mirrored shields to confuse reptilian eyes. But at the gate they met not a beast, only their king, bare-chested, spear discarded, arms raised. Cycreus confessed. The dragon's fury had leaked into him. He'd battled it outside and now battled it within, losing ground each night. "Bind me or burn me," he said. Eurystheus chose mercy darker than execution, exile. He ferried Cycreus to Eleusis, gift-wrapping the cursed king for the goddess Demeter, whose own grief could understand corrupted power. Demeter accepted, appointing Cycreus as guardian of her holy processions, his inner fire now repurposed to ward off all lesser threats. As Cycreus's ship slipped away, islanders swore the shoreline hissed, not from waves, but from a dragon's whisper receding with its unwilling host. Salamis kept the dragon's bronze scales nailed above city gates for centuries, tarnished mirrors reminding every leader, conquer your monsters, yes, but never wear their skins. Power taken from terror carries terror's seed. When rage becomes crown, abdication may be salvation. Young hunter Tiresias strikes the snakes with his staff. Hera curses him into a woman for 7 years. He marries, bears children, learns the loom songs of grief men never hear. 7 winters later, he meets the serpents again, carefully steps over them, spell breaks. He's male once more. Later, Zeus and Hera bicker. Who enjoys love more, man or woman? They drag Tiresias in as data point. He sides with Zeus. Women feel 9 times the pleasure. Hera, furious, blinds him. Zeus, guilt-struck, gifts prophecy and a lifespan of 7 generations. Thus, the greatest seer of Thebes walks the tightrope of fate without eyesight, yet clearer vision than any living soul. It's said he chuckled on his deathbed. Blind, I've seen 2 worlds, inside and out. King Ceyx sails to consult an oracle. Wife Alcyone prays he waits for calmer weather. He doesn't. Zeus, annoyed that Ceyx invoked him too often in casual oaths, hurls a thunderstorm that swallows the ship. Ceyx's spirit, soaked and shivering, begs Iris to carry a goodbye. Sleep god Morpheus impersonates Ceyx's drowned corpse in Alcyone's dream. She wakes screaming, runs to the surf. There's the real body, ghost pale in foam. In raw despair, she leaps after him. The gods, pierced by this double plunge, morph the lovers mid-air into halcyon birds, kingfishers with royal blue backs. To let their floating nest survive, Zeus stills the winter seas for 14 days every January. Sailors call it the halcyon days, when storms bank their rage and even grief takes a coffee break. Which transformation slapped hardest? Tree, oath, dragon, gender shift, or bird? Hit the comments. Smash like. If you'll think twice before reading random fruit out loud, subscribe for next week's plunge into the 3 mortals who blackmailed the fates. And ring that bell. Unlike Zeus's thunder, it won't roast you for imposter syndrome. See you in the halcyon calm. You thought fairy tales were magical. Think again. The real origins of these classic tales are disturbing, gruesome, and filled with horror. Many of these stories have been sanitized for modern audiences, but their original versions were filled with betrayal, curses, and brutal consequences. From Pinocchio's horrifying fate to the true story of Bluebeard, let's dive into the darker side of fairy tales that history tried to erase. Fairy tales weren't always about happily ever after. Many of them were cautionary tales, warning of real dangers, human cruelty, and supernatural horrors. 1. The original Pinocchio, a gruesome fate. Before Disney made him a lovable puppet, Carlo Collodi's original Pinocchio was a terrifying little troublemaker. Instead of learning his lesson, he was hanged from a tree by a group of bandits, left to suffocate as a punishment for his misdeeds. 2. Bluebeard, the serial killer's tale. Bluebeard was not a misunderstood nobleman. He was a full-blown serial killer. In Charles Perrault's version, Bluebeard marries multiple women and forbids them from entering one locked room. When his latest wife disobeys, she discovers the corpses of his past wives, hanging from hooks. He nearly kills her too, but she's saved at the last second by her brothers. Some believe this gruesome tale was inspired by real-life figures like Gilles de Rais, a nobleman convicted of horrific crimes. 3. The Pied Piper, a tale of mass disappearance. The Pied Piper of Hamelin was not just about a man who played music to lead away rats, he also took the children. In some versions, the town refuses to pay him for his services, so he takes revenge by luring all of their children into a cave, where they are never seen again. Historians believe this could be based on a real event, where an entire group of children from Hamelin mysteriously vanished in the Middle Ages. 4. Rumpelstiltskin, a vengeful trickster. In the original versions of Rumpelstiltskin, when the young queen guesses his name, he doesn't just leave. He flies into a rage so intense that he tears himself in half. In some versions, he stomps on the ground in fury, falling into a pit and disappearing forever. His obsession with taking the queen's child has led some to believe he wasn't just a trickster, but something far darker. 5. The Robber Bridegroom, a wedding night nightmare. This lesser-known grim tale tells the story of a young woman forced to marry a wealthy man. Suspicious of her husband-to-be, she follows him to his home, only to discover that he and his band of robbers murder and eat women. She watches in horror as they butcher a young girl, cutting her into pieces. Luckily, she escapes and exposes them, leading to their execution. 6. The Juniper Tree, a tale of cannibalism and revenge. One of the most horrifying grim fairy tales, the Juniper Tree tells of a stepmother who decapitates her stepson, cooks his body, and feeds it to his unsuspecting father. The boy's sister buries his bones under a juniper tree, and from the tree the boy returns as a vengeful spirit, transforming into a bird and dropping a millstone on his stepmother, crushing her to death. 7. The Girl Without Hands, a story of betrayal and survival. In this disturbing fairy tale, a poor man accidentally sells his daughter to the devil in exchange for wealth. When she resists the devil's temptations, her own father chops off her hands to fulfill the bargain. Eventually, she escapes, gains magical silver hands, and finds a happier fate, but not before enduring unimaginable suffering. Why were these stories so disturbing? Fairy tales weren't just for children. They were warnings, morality lessons, and sometimes outright horror stories meant to instill fear and obedience. Over time, many of them were altered, softened, or rewritten to make them more acceptable. Which of these dark fairy tales shocked you the most? Want to uncover more forgotten stories and chilling legends? Subscribe now and dive into the forgotten history of fairy tales. Heroes, monsters, tragedies, you know the drill. Tonight we flip the script. Some little-known tales where wit, nerve, or kindness earn outright miracles. Glass number 1 holds a bronze serpent coiled around a sprig of green, and a boy who literally came back sweeter than honey. Knossos in Midsummer smells of rosemary, sea salt, and beeswax. While the court argued harvest taxes, young Glaucus chased a bright blue lizard past the kitchens, through a corridor stacked with amphorae of fermenting honey, and, because small boys fit where gods do not, straight down a ladder into the palace cellars. Down there the air was syrup thick. Glaucus peered into a half-open jar, hoping to see the lizard's tail. One wobble, a slip, a splash. The honey swallowed his cry, sealed itself like amber, and the cellar went still except for the slow fizz of wild yeast. When the nurse discovered an empty playroom, Minos promised royal exiles, or worse, to anyone who failed to find his heir. Search parties raked the island. An oracle finally muttered, "He is where sweetness turns to gold, and the color-changing calf is the compass." Everyone stared blankly, except one messenger who remembered a traveling seer rumored to solve riddles the way bards solve rhyme schemes. Polyidus arrived soaked in salt spray and sarcasm. Minos thrust him in front of the palace's miracle calf, white at dawn, tawny by noon, black at dusk. The king demanded an explanation, and his son before sundown. The seer stroked his beard, watched the calf cycle its living palette, and smiled. The answer is not the hide, but the eyes, he mused. At dawn, the calf watched the white sun. At noon, bronze. At dusk, onyx night. It mirrored what it beheld. So must the prince. He is hidden where color vanishes, Polyidus concluded, and descended alone into the wine-dark storerooms. Lantern raised, he located the honey amphora, whose surface held no reflections, only silence. He cracked the seal, found Glaucus suspended in golden stillness, lips blue, limbs floating like reeds in amber. When guards hauled boy and jar to the throne room, Minos's relief curdled into fury. "Resurrect him," he ordered, "or you will keep him company." The seer and the honey coffin were locked inside a stone vault. The bar grinded shut. Torches flickered out. The only light came from honey's inner glow. Polyidus knelt, mind racing through every charm he knew. None could reverse 2 hours without breath. A soft hiss cut the darkness. A serpent, scales gold as harvest wheat, slipped under the door. Polyidus, fearing venom, crushed it with a wine jug. Silence returned, briefly. A second serpent slid beside its fallen mate, circled the body, vanished into a crack, and re-emerged, clutching a sprig of leaves that glimmered with emerald fire. It pressed the herb to the dead serpent's mouth. In a shiver of sinew, the creature revived. The pair slithered away, leaving the leaf behind like a lesson. Polyidus's pulse hammered. He ground the glowing plant between stone shards, smeared the paste across Glaucus's cold lips, and, half praying to gods who seldom pick up, waited. A heartbeat. 2. Then the boy coughed, honey and air and the shriek of returning life. He sat up wide-eyed, asking if lunch was ready. The vault erupted in shouts. Guards dragged them to Minos, whose relief eclipsed his threats. "Teach the child your art," the king commanded, "and you may leave Crete with both eyes intact." For 30 days, Polyidus tutored Glaucus, reading omens in bird flight, divining storms by the smell of stone, decoding dreams as if they were parchment. Each lesson the seer delivered with growing dread. Minos could weaponize prophecy. On the final morning, he presented Glaucus with a cup of wine to seal memory. The boy drank. Polyidus leaned close, whispered a single word, and the wine turned bitter. Glaucus spat it back onto Polyidus's lips. That was the spell. Every technique, every cosmic shortcut drained from the boy's mind like sand through a broken hourglass. He would live healthy, happy, but ordinary. The gift stayed locked in Polyidus's own skull. The seer departed at sunset, pockets empty except for a few stray violet leaves, the serpent herb. Some say he planted them across the Aegean. Others insist he fed them to bees, breeding honey that glows faintly green when moonlight is thin. In mountain apiaries of rural Greece, beekeepers still search for glaucous honey, said to cure a stopped heart if administered within 3 breaths. And every cellar apprentice learns, keep lids tight, keep ladders chained, and keep an eye out for serpents. Sometimes they carry medicines gods never meant us to find. Nymph Princess Cyrene tackles a lion preying on her father's cattle. Apollo, stalking inspiration, watches her wrestling the beast bare-handed and thinks, "Forget liars, that's poetry." He swoops not with roses but a gold chariot pulled by griffins. "Rule a land of your own," he says, pointing across the Mediterranean. Cyrene's answer, "Give me a bowstring and some good soil." She rides shotgun all the way to Libya. On sun-drenched highlands, she spears the ground. Fresh springs burst. The place becomes Cyrene, namesake queen founder. Apollo immortalizes her as a long-lived nymph. Their sons include Aristaeus, future bee guru, and Idmon, Argonaut prophet. Centuries later, Cyrenean olive oil sells for triple price in Athens. Bottles carry a tiny embossed lion, reminder that one headlock can echo into a civilization. Morning of his birth, infant Hermes crawls out of cradle, spies a tortoise, hollows the shell, strings cowgut. Voila, the first lyre. Same afternoon, he rustles 50 of Apollo's divine cattle, walking them backward to confuse hoofprints. Apollo tracks the tune of an unfamiliar instrument to a cave and catches, not a rustler, a giggling baby. Hermes begins to play. The melody melts Apollo's fury like wax. The sun god trades the entire herd plus the golden staff of herdsmen for the lyre. Contract signed before Hermes can crawl again. Apollo becomes patron of music. Hermes gains official portfolio of travelers, traders, and, ironically, thieves. Every time a guitarist hands a riff to a bandmate for mutual gain, they reenact that cave-side barter. Enslaved courtesan Rhodopis toils in a Nile Delta villa. Her only treasure, a rose-hued slipper dating to her free childhood. She washes linens in the river, humming Ionian lullabies. While drying on the bank, one slipper is whisked by a sacred falcon, messenger of Horus, who drops it into Pharaoh Psammetichus's lap during court. Kings love omens. He declares he will marry the owner. Decree echoes across gnomes. Every woman must try the slipper. Noble women sulk. The shoe fits none until desert winds guide inspectors to Rhodopis scrubbing floors. The leather hugs her heel like destiny. Pharaoh weds the astonished Greek. At festivals, Rhodopis releases doves in thanks, tying our dove myth into hers, while storytellers across the Mediterranean seed the earliest Cinderella variant. Tyrrhenian pirates spy a pretty youth on an island. Clueless, it's Dionysus in vacation mode. They abduct him, plotting ransom. Helmsman Acoetes senses trouble but is overruled. Ropes fall off as ivy coils up masts. Sweet wine floods planks. Panthers materialize, purring menace. Pirates jump ship in panic. Instead of vengeance, Dionysus transforms them into dolphins so they can atone by guiding sailors. Acoetes receives priesthood and a lifetime ticket to every Bacchic festival. Mediterranean fishermen still toss libations overboard for the merry sailors, believing every dolphin escort is a pirate making cosmic amends. On a Boeotian hillside, twin princes Amphion and Zethus debate destiny. Zethus flexes farm boy muscle, shouting, "Stone walls rise by calloused hands." Amphion replies by tuning a 7-string lyre, a gift Apollo slipped into his cradle. They inherit a dream, rebuild ruined Thebes. Zethus drives oxen and hefts limestone, but progress is glacial. At sundown, Amphion plucks a chord so pure nightingales freeze mid-song. Blocks quiver, lift and float into place. Each note a crane, each chord a pulley. Workers drop their levers and just watch. The wall grows faster than dawn's shadow. Jealous masons challenge him to raise the Cyclopean gate alone. Amphion smiles, strums a rugged minor scale. Boulders lumber across the valley like obedient elephants. Zethus, not to be outdone, times hammer blows to his brother's rhythm. For one glorious hour, hard labor becomes rock ballet. When the ramparts close, citizens cheer both sinew and song. Legends claim every stronghold thereafter leaves a lyre motif somewhere in its masonry, a secret tip of the hat to the prince who taught stones to dance. Modern acoustic engineers still reference the Amphion effect when vibration solves heavy lift problems. Princess Evadne hides an affair with Apollo. During labor, a blaze of violet light floods the barn. Baby Eamus arrives enveloped in wild violets. Fearful, she places him on the riverbank, trusting fate. Weeks later, shepherds follow a bizarre sight, honeybees moving in arrow formation. They find the infant alive, fed by nectar dripping from the flowers around him. The shepherd who lifts the child hears a voice inside his skull. "Raise me, I'll repay you in answers." At adolescence, Apollo calls Iamus to Olympia's sacred grove. The god lays out two golden bowls, memory and forgetting, telling him to sip both. First bowl grants recall of every secret root in earth. Second erases the fear of sharing that knowledge. Iamus founds a bloodline of oracles, famed for perfect attendance records at Delphi and Olympia. Even today, locals say a self-sown violet patch near the Alpheus River blooms out of season before big sporting events, Apollo's subtle wink that a prophecy ticket is about to drop. Young healer Melampus saves two baby snakes from a plow blade. Nights later, they slither onto his pillow and lick his ears with herbal-coated tongues. He bolts upright, to a cacophony that suddenly makes sense. Sparrows gossip, ants debate tunnel routes, sheep rehearse lullabies. King Proteus's daughters are struck with goat hallucinations, stampeding through Argos. Melampus eavesdrops on an oak tree, chuckling with a raven. A draught of hellebore in river foam will still their frenzy. He brews it. One sip and royal sanity snaps back. Kingdom cheers. Fee time. Melampus wants 1/3 of the realm. Proetus balks until the cattle low in perfect Greek. He's worth it. Impossible to refuse a bovine referendum. Territory ceded. For generations, Argive herders prop a wooden ear in new barns, a reminder that real leadership might start with understanding what even a beetle has to say. Priest King Aeneas hosts Dionysus and Apollo at a midsummer feast. In gratitude, the gods bless his three daughters, Oeno, Spermo, Elais, with hand gestures that turn objects into wine, grain, and oil. Years later, the Achaean armada, en route to Troy anchors at Delos, supplies dangerously low. Aeneas offers help. The daughters flick wrists, and the beach is suddenly a farmer's market. Agamemnon plots to kidnap the miracle caterers for a 10-year war buffet. Dionysus intervenes. With a grape-leaf touch, he turns the sisters into doves. Free to fly anywhere, grain, oil, and wine are prayers waiting to be answered. Delian festivals still release 3 white doves at dawn over picnic blankets. Fishermen swear the birds guide them to shoals fat with fish. Proof generosity multiplies even after airborne retirement. If you felt the buzz of bees and the rattle in the dark, hit like, subscribe for more long-form myth dives, and ring the bell so the next chapter arrives before the honey seals shut. Imagine having a wish so powerful that everything you touch turns to gold. Sounds like a dream, right? But for King Midas, this dream turned into a nightmare. Let's dive into his tragic story. Once upon a time, King Midas ruled over a prosperous kingdom known for his wealth and opulence. But Midas wasn't just content with riches. He wanted more. He wished for the ability to turn anything he touched into gold. One day, the god Dionysus appeared before him and, impressed by Midas's devotion, granted him the wish. At first, Midas was overjoyed. Everything he touched, his food, his treasures, his furniture, transformed into gold. His wealth grew beyond imagination, and his joy knew no bounds. But soon, Midas realized the curse of his wish. He touched a rose, gold. He touched his food, gold. Desperate for a meal, he tried to drink water, gold. In horror, Midas realized that even his daughter, whom he loved dearly, turned into a lifeless golden statue when he touched her. Furious with the consequences of his greed, Midas begged Dionysus for mercy. The god, seeing the king's suffering, told him to wash in the river Pactolus. And in that moment, Midas's golden touch was taken away. The river's waters, now imbued with Midas's curse, carried gold downstream, forever tainting the land. King Midas's story is a reminder that greed often blinds us to the consequences of our desires. His once prized gift became his greatest curse, teaching us that not all treasures are worth the price. If King Midas's tale of power and greed left you thinking, make sure to subscribe for more epic Greek myths and their timeless lessons. Stay tuned for more stories of fate, love, and the gods' wrath. What makes Zeus, the mighty king of the Greek gods, one of the most fascinating figures in mythology? Is it his unparalleled power over the skies, his cunning strategies, or the sheer drama of his endless affairs? While his tales are legendary, there's one story that stands out: the epic battle that earned Zeus his throne, the Titanomachy. This isn't just a story of a god's rise to power, it's a tale of rebellion, alliances, betrayal, and the ultimate struggle between two generations of divine beings. Stay with us as we dive into the myth of the Titanomachy, Zeus's role in overthrowing the Titans, and the secrets that shaped his reign. Before Zeus became the king of the gods, his father, Cronus, ruled the cosmos. Cronus was the youngest of the Titans, a race of primordial deities born of Uranus, the sky, and Gaia, the earth. The Titans were immensely powerful, but also deeply flawed. Cronus had gained power by overthrowing his own father, Uranus, in a brutal act of betrayal. But just as Cronus had betrayed his father, a prophecy loomed over him, warning that one of his own children would overthrow him. To prevent this, Cronus took a horrifying precaution. He swallowed each of his children as they were born, imprisoning them in his stomach for eternity. But Gaia, the ever-watchful mother of the gods, wasn't about to let this happen again. When Rhea, Cronus's wife, gave birth to Zeus, Gaia devised a plan. Rhea tricked Cronus by handing him a stone wrapped in swaddling clothes, which he swallowed, believing it was his newborn son. Meanwhile, Zeus was spirited away to a hidden cave on the island of Crete, where he was raised in secret. Zeus grew up under the care of nymphs and a goat named Amalthea, who nourished him with her milk. As he matured, Zeus learned of his father's tyranny and vowed to free his siblings and challenge Cronus's rule. Zeus couldn't take on Cronus and the Titans alone. He needed allies. His first move was to rescue his siblings trapped inside Cronus. With the help of the goddess Metis, Zeus tricked Cronus into drinking a potion that caused him to vomit up his children: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, fully grown and ready for battle. Now united, the 6 Olympian siblings declared war on Cronus and the Titans. But the Titans were powerful, and the war, known as the Titanomachy, would rage for 10 years with no clear victor. Realizing they needed an advantage, Zeus turned to the most unlikely of allies, the Hecatonchires and the Cyclopes. These were monstrous children of Gaia and Uranus, imprisoned in Tartarus by Cronus out of fear of their immense power. The Hecatonchires had 100 hands and unparalleled strength, while the Cyclopes were master craftsmen. Zeus descended into Tartarus, defeated its terrifying guardians, and freed these imprisoned beings. In gratitude, the Cyclopes forged weapons for Zeus and his brothers. Zeus received the thunderbolt, Poseidon the trident, and Hades a helmet of invisibility. With these tools and the raw power of the Hecatonchires, the Olympians finally had the upper hand. The final clash of the Titanomachy was a cosmic spectacle. The Titans, led by Cronus, unleashed their full fury, shaking the very foundations of the universe. Mountains crumbled, seas boiled, and the skies erupted in chaos. But Zeus and his allies were relentless. Zeus hurled his thunderbolts with unerring precision, scorching the battlefield and scattering the Titans' ranks. Poseidon unleashed massive earthquakes, and Hades used his helmet of invisibility to sow confusion among their enemies. The Hecatonchires proved invaluable, hurling massive boulders with their 100 hands, overwhelming the Titans. One by one, the Titans fell, their immense power no match for the combined might of the Olympians and their allies. Cronus was the last to fall. Zeus struck him down with a thunderbolt so powerful that it split the skies. With Cronus' defeat, the Titanomachy was over. With the Titans defeated, Zeus and his siblings faced a choice: what to do with their vanquished foes. In a move both strategic and ruthless, Zeus imprisoned the Titans in Tartarus, deep within the underworld, where they would remain for eternity under the watchful eye of the Hecaton Kyries. Zeus then divided the cosmos with his brothers. He claimed the skies as his domain, Poseidon took the seas, and Hades ruled the underworld. Together they established the rule of the Olympians, with Zeus as their undisputed king. But the Titanomachy left scars. Gaia, enraged by the imprisonment of her Titan children, gave birth to new monstrous beings to challenge Zeus's reign. Among them was Typhon, a creature so fearsome that even the gods trembled before him. Typhon's battle with Zeus is another story for another day, but it serves as a reminder that power in the ancient world was never secure. Zeus's rise to power marked the beginning of a new era, but his reign was anything but peaceful. While he was the king of the gods, his rule was marked by constant challenges, from rebellious mortals to jealous deities and his own unquenchable desire for love and control. Zeus was both a protector and a tyrant, a figure who inspired awe and fear. His thunderbolts were a symbol of justice, but they were also a tool of destruction. He fathered countless children, both mortal and divine, and his many affairs often sparked conflict among the gods. Yet, despite his flaws, Zeus's rule brought stability to a chaotic world. Under his reign, the gods established order, overseeing the realms of humans and maintaining the delicate balance between earth, sea, and sky. The myth of Zeus and the Titanomachy isn't just a tale of war. It's a story about the cycles of power and rebellion. Just as Zeus overthrew Cronus, who had overthrown Uranus, Greek myths suggest that even the mightiest rulers are vulnerable to the forces of change. Zeus's story reminds us that leadership comes with its own set of challenges. It's not just about gaining power, it's about maintaining it, often at great cost. Zeus's rise to power is one of the most thrilling tales in mythology, filled with battles, alliances, and sacrifices. But what do you think? Was Zeus a just ruler, or was he simply another tyrant destined to fall like the Titans before him? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed this dive into Greek mythology, share it with fellow myth lovers, and subscribe to our channel for more epic tales from the ancient world. Until next time, remember, the gods may rule from above, but their stories remind us of the struggles we all face below. Imagine a woman so terrifying that a single glance from her could turn anyone into stone. Medusa, a name that echoes through history as a monster, a villain, and a symbol of pure horror. But what if everything you thought you knew about her was wrong? Medusa wasn't always a monster. Her story is one of betrayal, injustice, and a curse she never deserved. She wasn't born a villain. She was made into one by the gods themselves. But even as a victim, she found a way to turn her tragedy into power. Today, we'll unravel the myth of Medusa and discover the deeper truth behind her story. From her tragic origins to her transformation into a feared Gorgon, to her epic confrontation with Perseus. This is the tale of Medusa like you've never heard it before. Long before the snakes, before the curse, Medusa was a mortal woman of extraordinary beauty. She wasn't born a monster. She was born human, the daughter of the sea gods, Phorcys and Ceto. While her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, were immortal Gorgons, Medusa stood apart as the only mortal among them. But it wasn't her mortality that set her apart. It was her beauty. Medusa's golden hair, radiant complexion, and striking eyes captured the attention of everyone, even the gods. She served as a priestess in the temple of Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, vowing to remain pure and devoted to the goddess. This is where her life took a tragic turn. According to the myth, Poseidon, the god of the sea, became infatuated with Medusa. Overcome by desire, he pursued her relentlessly, and one fateful day he cornered her in Athena's temple. Medusa, defenseless, could not escape his wrath. But instead of protecting her, Athena turned her fury against Medusa. The goddess, enraged by the desecration of her temple, cursed Medusa for what had happened, punishing the victim instead of the perpetrator. Athena's curse transformed Medusa into a gorgon, a being so hideous that no one could bear to look at her. Her golden hair turned into a nest of venomous snakes, and her eyes became so powerful that a single glance could turn living creatures to stone. This moment defined Medusa's new existence. Once revered for her beauty, she was now feared and hunted as a monster. But beneath the horror of her transformation lay a deeper question. Was Medusa truly cursed, or had she been given a weapon to defend herself in a world that had betrayed her? Medusa fled from civilization, retreating to a remote island where she lived in solitude. Here she came to terms with her new form and the terror it inspired. The snakes in her hair hissed constantly, and her reflection, once a source of pride, was now a weapon she couldn't dare to look at. But the world wouldn't let her rest. Tales of the monster of the island spread across Greece, and soon warriors came seeking glory by trying to slay her. None succeeded. Each challenger who entered her domain fell victim to her petrifying gaze, their bodies forever frozen in stone. Medusa's life became one of survival, fending off those who sought to destroy her while grappling with the isolation of her curse. She was trapped in a cycle of violence she didn't choose, but couldn't escape. As the years passed, Medusa's story became twisted. In the eyes of mortals, she was no longer the victim of a cruel curse, but a monster to be feared. The tragic young woman was lost to legend, replaced by the image of a terrifying villain. Enter Perseus, a young demigod with a destiny to fulfill. Tasked with bringing back Medusa's head as proof of his strength, Perseus embarked on a perilous journey to find her. But unlike the warriors before him, Perseus wasn't relying solely on his skill. He had the favor of the gods. Athena and Hermes provided Perseus with gifts to help him on his quest. Winged sandals to fly, a reflective shield to avoid Medusa's gaze, and a sword sharp enough to cut through anything. Most importantly, he was given a magical bag to safely carry her severed head. Perseus's journey to Medusa's lair was filled with danger, but none compared to the final challenge, facing the Gorgon herself. When Perseus arrived, Medusa was sleeping. For the first time in years, she looked peaceful, an almost human reminder of who she once was. But Perseus couldn't afford to hesitate. Using the reflective shield as a mirror, he avoided her petrifying gaze and struck with precision, severing her head in one swift motion. The blood that spilled from Medusa's neck gave birth to two incredible beings, Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chryser, a golden giant. Even in death, Medusa's body produced miracles, a testament to the power she had carried within her. Perseus carried Medusa's severed head back to Greece, where it became both a trophy and a weapon. Her gaze retained its power, turning enemies into stone, and Perseus used it to defeat his foes and protect his people. But Medusa's story didn't end with her death. Over time, her image transformed from that of a monster to a symbol of strength and defiance. Women, especially, began to reclaim her story, seeing her as a figure who resisted the gods and survived unimaginable betrayal. Today, Medusa is more than a mythological figure. She's an icon. Her face appears in art, literature, and even modern movements that challenge systems of power and oppression. But the question remains, was Medusa truly a monster, or was she a victim of a world that feared her power? Medusa's story is a reminder that myths are more than just tales of gods and heroes. They're reflections of human nature, of the injustices and triumphs we still see today. So, what do you think? Was Medusa a villain, or was she a misunderstood symbol of resilience? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Give this video a like if you found her story as fascinating as we did. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the myths and legends that continue to shape our world. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep looking beyond the surface. Welcome back, lore hunters. Tonight I'm unwrapping some myths that slip through the cracks of pop culture, tales so rich you could live in them for weeks. Let the veils fall. Old Phaon hauled passengers between Lesbos and Asia Minor in a skiff patched more than a beggar's coat. One dusk he carried an aged woman for free when storms cancelled the rich man's coin. She touched his wrist, her skin warmed like sunrise. That crone revealed herself as Aphrodite. Payment: an alabaster jar of rose-scented balm. Phaon rubbed a dab on his temples. Waves reflected a new face, jaw sharp, curls ink black. Word of the god-veined ferryman blitzed across isles. Queens queued for night voyages. Fame fed on humility until none was left. Phaon mocked old lovers, hiked his fares, painted his hull with gold leaf. Aphrodite, hearing temple incense now dedicated to Phaon instead of herself, revisited, this time as a scarred sailor claiming poverty. Rebuked, she cursed the balm to invert. Every admiring gaze would now age him a year. By next moon, the once idol looked like driftwood. He vanished, some say into the strait's whirlpool, others into a hermit cave. Poets still swear his ghostly skiff appears on starless nights. If you board, you arrive at dawn a decade older, pockets full of rose petals that rot before noon. Queen Althea of Calydon screamed through her labor as the hearth fire hissed. From the embers a coal spat out, a single firebrand the length of a dagger. The fates appeared, scissors glinting. Lachesis measured the newborn's life against that coal. Clotho whispered, "When the wood is ash, the boy is dust." Althea snatched the brand, quenched it in a silver urn, and hid it under her bed. The baby, Meleager, grew into a spear god in the training yard. None but his mother guessed why storms seemed to pause for him. Years later, Artemis loosed a boar monstrous as a siege tower to punish King Oeneus for a skipped sacrifice. Hunters from every Greek polis gathered. Meleager led, eyes bright as forge fire. Among the heroes strode Atalanta, swift, lethal, and female, an affront to the older princes. In the thicket, Atalanta's arrow struck first blood. Meleager's spear finished the beast. He offered her the pelt. Male egos erupted. Two of Meleager's uncles drew blades. Meleager defended the huntress, slaying his own kin. Word sprinted ahead of him to the palace. Althea collapsed at news her brothers lay dead by her son's hand. Grief wrestled prophecy in her chest. Shaking, she fetched the firebrand, lit a torch, and held both over the brazier. Her love warred her rage for 9 heartbeats. On the 10th, she let the wood slip. Miles away, Meleager felt his marrow ignite. He dropped mid-stride, armor ringing like a funeral bell. At the palace hearth, the brand hissed its last and fell to gray powder. Althea watched the flakes swirl, then walked into the flames herself. In Calydon, they still say, "Whatever a mother births, her fire can reclaim." Young Cyparissus roamed Chios with a bronze shepherd's crook taller than himself. Apollo, idling in mortal disguise, gifted the boy a tame stag crowned with ivory antlers. It followed him like sunrise follows dawn. One blistering noon, flies tormented the stag. Cyparissus, meaning only mercy, aimed his javelin to shoe them. The tip glanced off a stone, pierced soft flank. The deer collapsed, breath misting blood. Cyparissus dropped beside it, sobs carving caverns in his throat. Apollo arrived to heal, lyre weeping gold notes. But the boy refused salvation for himself. He begged, "Give me a grief that never dries, so I remember him forever." Clouds boiled violet, the ground drank color from his sandals upward. Where Cyparissus knelt now stands the first cypress, trunk straight as a spear of mourning, sap weeping resin tears. Greeks plant the tree in graveyards because its roots plunge only downward, never sideways, like a grief that refuses distraction. On summer nights, hunters claim the wind through cypress needles sounds like antlers brushing the sky. Athens hailed Cephalus and Procris as couple of the century, he an expert hunter, she a devotee of Artemis. As wedding gift, the goddess sent two marvels, Lalaps, a hound fated to catch any quarry, and a spear destined never to miss. One morning Cephalus rested from the chase and sang to the breeze, calling it Nephele, sweet comfort. The dawn goddess Eos, eavesdropping, snatched him skyward, offering immortality. He pined for Procris. Eos scoffed, "She'll betray you." Suspicion slid under his skin like splintered arrow reeds. Cephalus returned in disguise, bribing servants to hint Procris had strayed. At twilight she arrived in the woods, masked, to spy on him first. Hearing rustle, Cephalus loosed the divine spear toward the sound. It cannot miss. The mask tore away, Procris's eyes wide as shattering glass. She fell against his chest, whispering only, "The breeze, remember?" Cephalus buried her on Mount Hymettus, pinned the fatal spear beside the grave, and leashed Laiolaps there eternally. Some nights hikers see a spectral dog chase a phantom hare in circles that never close, while a jealous wind mutters the name Nephele through the pines. Poor farmer Ligdus told his pregnant wife, "If the child is female, exposure must follow. Dowries ruin paupers." Desperate Telethusa prayed to Isis. The goddess appeared, golden-winged. "Bear the child, raise her as son." Baby Iphis arrived. They bound her chest, taught her spearcraft, named her heir. At 13, Iphis was betrothed to radiant Ianthe, who adored her future husband. Iphis loved her too, but carried a secret that tore her apart. Nights she begged Isis, "Either unmake love or unmake lie." Eve of the wedding, Iphis roamed the temple till exhaustion. At midnight, statue eyes flashed, muscle quaked under skin, voice dropped like falling figs. When dawn trumpets blew, Iphis emerged, broad-shouldered, jaw square, still wearing mother's hopes, but now truth-shaped. Ceremony erupted in double amazement. A father spared from murder, a bride gaining the groom her heart already knew, a city given a living parable that gods can edit, flesh the way poets edit verse. On anniversaries, Crete's couples exchange braided veils, symbol that love may bend rules when petitioned with courage. Satyr-blooded Ampelus dazzled Dionysus, youth swagger, curls like grape tendrils. He rode a bull through vineyards, boasting he was braver than the god. Dionysus, half teasing, half testing, sent a gadfly. The bull bucked. Ampelus flew, spine meeting earth with a wet crack. Thunderclouds curdled purple. Grief-stricken, the god plucked the corpse's heartbeat, planted it. From ribs sprouted twisting vines, from fingers curling shoots. First grapes. He fermented their juice with tears, naming the wine Ampelosios, the taste of regret. Every toast pours a little myth, sweetness chased by sting. Drink deep and you repeat the boy's brag, but this time, hopefully, know when to dismount. On the gray docks of Anthedon, a lone fisherman named Glaucus noticed something odd. Every fish he caught leapt back into the sea after flopping across a patch of wild green herbs. His curiosity, half hunger, half science, won. He tasted one leaf. A heartbeat later, his pulse throttled like a war drum, gills tore open on his neck. Terrified, he dove overboard and discovered he could breathe brine like air. In the midnight blue below, sea deities gathered, nereids swirling like living lace, old Phorcys with crab-shell crown. They greeted the newcomer, then forced a cup of ichor on him. "Drink, forget the shore." Visions blitzed his skull, shipwrecks yet to come, lovers yet to drown. Prophecy is a toxin that never metabolizes. Glaucus tried to surface, to hug his aging mother, but every wave slapped him back. Barnacles crusted over his old rowing calluses. He practiced his new craft instead, whispering tides to sailors, trading secrets for offerings of bronze and bread that sank unreachable. Legend says if you stare into rough surf and hear your own name, it's Glaucus warning you to turn home. Ignore him, and you join his choir. Another voice lost to the deep. In Attica ruled Periphas, so just that subjects built temples to him, not Zeus. Offerings piled higher than to Olympus. Flattery sharpens divine talons. Thunderhead over the palace. As lightning coiled to strike, Apollo intervened. "Spare the righteous, punish the praise." Zeus relented, halfway. Before the court's eyes, Periphas's flesh rippled into plumage, arms broadened into storm-breaker wings. His queen begged accompaniment, became an osprey. Throne room glittered with abandoned gold. Zeus decreed the new eagle his personal herald, immortal, hungry for serpents of hubris. Every lightning flash, tradition holds Periphas scouts ahead, making sure no mortal altars bear the wrong name again. Arcadian huntress Callisto pledged lifelong virginity to Artemis. Oaths echo loudest in forest silence. Zeus, disguised as Artemis, tricked Callisto when her secret pregnancy showed. The real goddess burned with double fury, betrayed and impersonated. Artemis transformed the girl into a shaggy bear. Callisto's newborn, Arcas, left human. Years later, on a hunt, Arcas drew bow at the lunging bear, unaware it was his mother. Zeus intervened, flinging both into the sky as Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. They circle Polaris forever, never touching, an eternal near miss engraved in stars. Notice how each story spins one spindle. Desire collides with destiny, and form shatters. Greek myth isn't merely about gods showing off, it's about limits. And the instant you cross them, reality melts and recools into shapes that remember the crime.